All right, so here we are in the soil unit now. So we move from mass movements in the soil, which the mass movements have a lot to do with soil, but here we're going to look at the different properties, formation, characteristics, and then how soil goes into everything that we do on Earth, from our food to our structure to our houses to everything on Earth depends on that soil. And usually we don't even think about it, we just think about it as dirt. But it's so incredibly important to our lives. So let's take a look at it. We'll look at 2.4.1 first, which is soil formation and characteristics. All right. So the formation, including the soil profile. So soil is very important, again, not only because of mass movement, so we want to keep it stable, but also being the home for food and water holder for our vegetation. Or without the vegetation, we wouldn't have an oxygen source. So ensuring that our soil remains good and conducive to vegetation growth is essential to our survival and the survival of the environment. All right. Sorry about the ad there. Soil is actually formed by a combination of many things. It's like the medium, and we tend to think about it just being the dirt, but there's a lot of stuff going on in there. The main component, the parent, is the weathered rock. So it breaks down smaller, smaller, smaller. That would be the parent material. As the rock breaks down by erosion, it's compacted within the earth, bringing it back into the rock cycle. But the first few layers of this rock being down make up the essence of our soil. Joining that broken down rock is organic matter, such as fallen leaves and dead trees and organisms. Decomposers, which are types of organism, will decompose that stuff and put it into the soil to take those nutrients and put them right into the soil, which is pretty cool. And then the vegetation can then use those nutrients after it's been decomposed and broken down. Soil contains all three phases of matter: solid, liquid, and gases. You wouldn't typically think of soil as having a gas component, but there are pores in there, so air fits in there, and that air is necessary for all the stuff that's under there in order to breathe. So if we break it down, the main components of soil are organic matter, mineral matter, which is sand, silt, or clay, water, and air. So if we dug down and pulled out soil until we hit the rock, it may look like this. This is what we call a soil profile, and you are responsible for knowing the different layers and what's in the different layers. So the O layer is basically, you can think about it as being your organic layer. It's the loose and partly decayed organic matter. Then we go A layer. The A layer is the mineral matter down here, mixed with some humus. Humus not being the stuff that goes with pitas, right? The ground up chickpeas. Humus is basically, if you were to reach down under the leaf litter in a forest to pull up that black, really kind of rich dirt, that's humus. So it's very organic and rich in nutrients. The E layer has been compacted further. It's light colored, has mineral particles. This will have leaching in it, and leaching is when water comes through it and takes components from that soil through there. So it'll be the zone of leaching. The B horizon, you're getting more rock-like here. Accumulation of clay transfer from above. Clay, we're going to learn, has very small particle size, so that goes the furthest down. And then B, again, even more compact. Then the C layer. You're pretty much rock at this stage. You might not, but you can still probably dig through it. And then unweathered parent material is going to be your rock underneath. So it just gets more and more compact as you go down. So humus, I already talked about there. And leaching. Water that passes through layers on its way to aquifer plants will absorb minerals. When it absorbs those minerals, so all that stuff will be rich. When the water goes through there in that zone of leaching, it's going to take that out. So that layer is probably not going to have as much mineral or as nutrients. It's not going to be as nutrient rich because it's going to be leached out to the water. All right. So there's different characteristics of soil. The different characteristics, you do need to know what they are and how they work. Texture is number one. Texture is the balance of mineral particles in the soil. It's determined by the relative amount of sand, silt, and clay in the soil. Sand is going to be large particles. Silt's going to be medium-sized particles. Clay is going to be very small particles. Think about this, like when you go out to a baseball field and it's got the clay, right? If it rains, baseball's not cool because you've got all those puddles on the field. And why do those puddles appear? If that was sand you're running on, all right, it wouldn't compact very well. It wouldn't be good for running. However, the water would go straight through it. But clay, because it compacts so much, it fits together that the water will stand on top of it. So therefore, that's why you get all the flooding on the clay. So the smaller the particles, the more compact they usually will get on the surface. So if you are to take the particles and separate them out, those three types, sand, silt, and clay, we have different names for the different combinations of those. And you usually use this thing called a soil triangle to figure that out. As you can see, clay, 100% clay is on the top here, all right? You've got 100% silt on the bottom right-hand corner, and you got 100% sand on the bottom left-hand corner, all right? So if you look and you use this triangle, it's a little difficult to figure out at first, but in this one, you've got the numbers going in the direction of the line that they are adjacent to. So 30% will go from left to right of clay, all right? Silt, as you can see, it's angled with these lines that are going parallel to those numbers, and silt or sand this way. So let's say I was on a test and I said, okay, what's the name of the soil that's 40% sand, 30% clay, that's 70%, all right, and 30%, all right, we're silt, all right, 40 clay, 30 sand, 30 silt. So we'd start with 40 clay. All right, we go over to 30 sand. So 40 clay all the way over here to 30 sand, which is also going to be 30 silt, and it lands right here, which would be still a little bit in the clay and almost in the clay loam. And you can do that for any of the things, any of the soil triangles that you have. So let's try another one. 20% clay, 40% sand, and 40% silt. So 20, 40, 40 goes right here, and that would be loam. The name of that would be loam. So it's fairly easy to use this, and we're actually going to do this in the lab, so we'll have more practice with it. All right? So like I said, sand particles are largest soil particles. Water moves through them very easily. Silt particles are medium sized. Water can be held and passed through, making it the best of the three particles for vegetation growth. And clay are the smallest, not good for vegetation growth, just like sand. Silt, you really want silt to grow vegetation. The next part of soil is biotic components. Biotic means living, so this is going to be the amount of living material in the soil. This will determine the rate at which the organic matter is present and decomposes. Percolation rate is the rate at which water moves through saturated, wet, granular material. So how fast does it move through? If it has a great percolation rate, it can absorb more water. It's highest in sand and lowest in clay. Like I said, the clay doesn't really let the water through at all. Too high of a percolation rate will result in water not being stored. So again, that's why you want the medium, the silt for that. Moisture content is the amount of water stored in the soil. It goes hand in hand with percolation rate. So of course, silt will probably have the best of this. Clay, it's going to stay on top. Sand, it's going to go straight through. Porosity is going to be the amount of empty space in the soil. This is important because this is how air is stored and how water travels through. Percent organic matter is the ratio of decomposed organic material that's present in the soil. So you do want a good amount of organic material, but you do not want it to all be organic material because then there's not the parent material there to provide the structure. So you only want about 5 to 10% organic matter for being successful in terms of farming and growing things. And fertility. Fertility basically describes the ability of the soil to support vegetation and other organic life. Fertile soil will have the following characteristics. It will be nutrient rich in terms of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, and that comes from the organic material. It will contain the minerals needed for plant nutrition like boron and chlorine. It will contain organic matter. Will have pH between 6 and 6.8. Will be well drained with a solid structure. Contain microorganisms that break down the organic material and have a good layer of topsoil. You want good, thick layers of O and A, the O and A layers. And that's pretty much it for the intro to soils.